recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer himself, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Is that true? Your friend and mine? I'm not friends to everyone out there, but how you doing, Conrad?
I was going to say, I thought me and you were friends, but feel free to set me straight.
We are. We you know, but
Sometime.
You said your friend and mine, so you're talking to the audience. I think if we've got some folks out there that are, I don't know, man, it's been a tough week, Conrad.
It could have been worse. You could have been a female strutting around Chicago, running your mouth and flipping your fingers off of Hall of Famers. And you get a new hat to wear that ain't so comfortable, a little ill-fitting hat. Jeff, here's my question. Before we get into what you did when you caved a lady's skull in this past week, I guess my question is,
I was going to talk about this entire week. We've got Bama. There was a funeral in my family this week, and you're going right into the, I mean, come on, man.
A funeral in your family? Well, we should stop right there. You want to?
Okay. So, folks, as we are recording this, Conrad, me and you have, we've said this, I guess it was either last week or the week before, we recorded late in the afternoon, right?
Yeah.
And this is the first time we are recording this Sunday night.
Yes.
Got in from Chicago this morning. Man, there were a lot of flights canceled. I got to tell you a Ricky Morton story. He was not happy at all last night about the flight situation. But anyway, first time we've recorded at night. Would you not say that, partner?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a weird look. If you're watching over on YouTube, you see that, well, it's kind of dark in Jeff Jarrett's background, but you got a lot of dark in your life these days based on what we've seen on pay-per-view, but continue.
Oh, we got some snow on the ground out there too. Anyway, no, you know, life in this platform that we've launched together dating back to May, it's been therapeutic. And I've had some buddies ask me, you know, what are the sort of the side benefits? And that's one of the things. You get to catch up and talk about the feedback on social media and then just what's going on. We get to talk a little baseball and different little side projects we have going on. We dive into some business, into some life. But Karen, my wife, her 94-year-old grandfather passed away. He and you know, I didn't really see the emotion coming out of it. Obviously, when you're 94, it's a very small funeral, very small burial. But he was a coal miner of 44 years.
Wow.
And they, you know, they don't make them like him anymore in so many ways. But right out my office, and Conrad, I know you've seen it, but that picture that hangs above as you walk in my office is a picture of about 100 men taken in 1946, the same year that my grandmother started in the wrestling business. And so Karen's grandfather, that photo was taken. There was about 100 guys outside the mine, the coal mine, and they were all as a family, you know, as a group before they went in the mine. So on my mantle, I have one of his lanterns, his lunchbox, and just sort of mementos. And so I shared that at the funeral. That's the first funeral I've spoke at, but it was it was really one of those moments that as we get older, I sat there and really reflected on, wow, the only thing, you know, when we come into this world, we have nothing. And when we leave this world, all we can leave, it's a legacy. And what a legacy of family love and hard work and perseverance. And what a man. I'm a miss. We called him Paw Paw. So it has been a roller coaster of a week. I know we hadn't had a lot of communication this week, Conrad. You've been busy. I've been super busy personally, but also professionally. But yeah, I thought I'd just share that, just to pay a little tribute to Paw Paw.
Do you think it would be appropriate and okay for you to tweet a picture of that picture that hangs outside of your office or studio or what have you?
Well, how about that? I sure will.
I mean, I don't know if that's something she would be okay with.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I told the story at the funeral when me and Karen got together, when we married or right before we got married, she said, "Hey, my parents are moving to town." Okay. I can understand that, you know, grandkids, and Karen's one of three. And so, you know, you can sort of see Karen's parents moving down because they can be around their grandkids. And and the brothers lived in Virginia and Carolina and just, all that. So, and she's the girl, so you can sort of see the parents following. Then about a week after that, she said, "Oh yeah, and my grandparents are moving down."
Wow.
So yeah, which is really cool, and how to support, me being on the road. Karen had a built-in support group coming to a new town, but I never really imagined. I didn't meet him till he was like 81, 82, 83. And so over the last 10 years, hung out with him a lot. He's a man's man, and he was surrounded by a lot of women and all that with my daughters and Karen and his daughters. So anyway, we became really tight. But I will, Conrad. I hope I remember to do that, but I will. I'll tweet that photo. It's a really cool photo. And you know what? Here's another little note of this on the photo. So back in those days, you can imagine the photography. So there is a gentleman that was on the left end, and as they took the photo, one in every crowd, he ran down after the camera started panning because it's one of those slow time. And so he's in the picture twice. So the picture has a lot of character in it. But yeah, it's so when I walk into my office, I'm not walking into a coal mine of doing a 10-hour shift. So everything is relatively speaking.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Well said. So,
well, listen, I wish I had the right words. I never know what to say when somebody loses somebody like that, but man, what a legacy and what a life,
Oh yeah. We celebrated it. Yeah. Incredible. So, all right, go back to digging me. And because we've talked about it every week and we wouldn't be doing it justice because they'd say, "Oh, Jeff and Conrad didn't talk about Roll Tide. Y'all didn't talk about Roll Tide."
Oh no. Yeah. Listen, I'm happy to talk about it. It should have aired last week, but we recorded it ahead of time, but hey, Alabama lost. I was wrong, and you were too. And hey, we lived
Hold up. I had some Georgia fans and some, I'll just call it Bammer haters.
Yeah, sure. There's plenty of them. Everybody but us. Yeah.
Oh, and they said, "Oh yeah, we won when it counted." And I go, "Now wait a minute. Alabama won when they counted. Had you guys beat us, now I'm saying I'm us, but had Georgia beat Bama." In this,
it would have never happened.
Oh, okay. So now the only true thing would be a rubber match, and we don't get to have that. So yes, they won the national championship, but Georgia don't need to get on their high horse like no.
And Kirby Smart has played Nick 182 times and lost 181. So
and the injuries. So anyway,
there's no need for a rubber match. There's been several, and Alabama's won every time. But next year, unfortunately for everybody else, Bryce Young will be back. So will Will Anderson Jr. We'll have healthy receivers, and Bama's going to do what Bama redoes. Other teams have rebuilding years. Alabama just reloads, and they're going to reload next year and be ready. And I'm excited for Georgia fans. I'm not saying this to be funny. I've said it here on the show. When we won in '92, I thought, man, I've heard my dad talk about this my whole life. We finally have a national championship, and I got to see one. That's awesome. And then when we won in '09, I thought, well, man, this is how lucky are we? Twice in a lifetime. So I've really viewed this entire Saban run as just playing with house money. And I'm really glad that all of my Georgia friends, guys like Arn Anderson and Cody Rhodes, and of course the whole Shivani clan, that they all got a victory, because literally it hadn't happened my entire lifetime. I'm 40 years old. They won in 1980. So it's been a long time, and what a great story. I mean, Stetson Bennett, they should turn that into a movie. Like, that's a made for a lifetime movie that people would get behind. How do you not pull for that guy? But they were the better team. We were outplayed. We were outcoached. Look at me saying we like I was on the field. But Bama lost and fair and square. Yeah. But I'll tell you, just here at Casa de Conrad, when Williams went down, I was like, well, that's a wrap. Yeah. Not trying to throw in the towel, but knowing that we're now down our first and our second best wide receivers, Bryce ain't going to be in a rhythm with these other guys, especially with the number one defense in the nation. And hey, they weren't. So kudos to Georgia, man. Enjoy this one. I know this one's a sweet one.
And I love it. All the SEC haters, when you get right down to it, schools are an hour and a half apart.
Yeah.
It's anyway. And what about them Titans? Tighten up.
Well, I mean, they didn't play this weekend because they had a bye.
So yeah, we're rested up.
Pretty cool.
King Henry and his expensive game-worn jerseys that are floating out there on the market. God almighty.
It's unbelievable what's going on in the memorabilia market and what's going on in the NFL. I saw a lot of people kicking the can this past weekend, but more importantly, I saw a lady rubbing her noggin. And, I just assume, and I really do mean this, like for you to travel the world and dedicate your life to professional wrestling and do these death matches and put on all these hardcore performances and really pay the price. I'm sure she's had to sleep in her car and work for gas money and pay her dues. You would think after all of that, they might have watched wrestling growing up, just thinking out loud. When Jeff Jarrett has a guitar in his hand, that ain't the time to flip him off, even if you're a woman, because he's subject to crush your skull and put a figure 4 on you. I think she got off easy. I'll tell you.
Oh, Conrad, it is the whole, and it, we'll call it the last outlaw and all the entitlement generation and these folks that the whole game changer scene that's going on right now is kind of surreal to me. Flew up there last night, got there late. I'll just say some interesting conversation went on in the back, and Alley Catch in the with Effie not in the arena. What else was supposed to happen? But Sunday's going to be interesting. I'll just say that it's really going to be interesting. I'm loving the Instagram and the Twitter feedback and the comments and the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the whole game changer scene. I was sitting backstage last night, Conrad. Who would have thought in 2022, Ricky Morton, Flash Funk, Spider Nate Webb, a death match going on, Cardona with the ECW title and threw it in a trash can. Gresham, hell of a match. I don't know if you got to see that, but Gresham and Funk. They have game changer, and we both have had this conversation. I've had my eye on them for several years. They're not just a deathmatch company, but boy, there's some folks in there that literally think they created the genre of professional wrestling. It just blows my mind.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I saw Effie's promo where he was saying that you were a clout chaser or a clout vampire. I forget what it is, but
Clout vampire.
You're basically saying that you're here to, suck the lifeblood out of what they built and what they created. And I'm thinking, pretty sure you've been doing it longer than he's been alive.
A guy came up to me last night and asked, have you seen a death match live? And I just kind of looked at him and I went, come again? Can you? And he just looked at me and I said, no, seriously, I want you to ask me that question again, because I'm positive I heard you, but I want you to hear he goes, oh man, no, what we do, it's on last tonight. We're doing a tribute match. And it was, really cool, and hats off. And they didn't put it on Fight. They put it on YouTube so everybody could see it. But the guy looked at me and says, have you ever seen a death match live? And I go, do you read the Wrestling Observer? Yeah. Oh yeah, I do. I said, okay. They got these awards, and some people think that they're silly and some people don't. And there's all kinds of opinions, but I think, Dave, and I've sometimes accused him of being a fiction writer and a nonfiction writer. And look, he has a subscription and he knows his audience, but
the awards are voted on by the readers.
That's what I was about to go to. And hats off to Mr. Crockett.
Oh yeah. Shout out to him, man.
Shout out to him. Could not be happier. He's one of those 22 original promoters. The last of the Mohican, not original, but he was one of the 22. It's just really cool. Hats off to the entire family. And it's been good recently, not to do a sidebar, to see David on TV. I just get a big grin on AEW program. But anyway, back to my story. And I said, so you are well aware of who Meltzer is? Yeah. He gives out these awards called Feud of the Year. Yeah. And I said, you ever heard of Jerry Lawler? He looked at me like, oh, come on. Where are you going with this? I said, okay. So in 92, I'd been wrestling 5.5, 6 years. And there were these two individuals called Larry Latham and Cujo, who used to be Cousin Junior, but then there was a whole host but they were as a tag team called the Moondogs. Now, do you think me and Lawler and the Moondogs had a classic technical romping, stomping tag match? He just looked at me. I said, pal, long before Game Changer, and no disrespect to Eastern Championship Wrestling and ECW and ECW chants, but long before ECW, where do you think old Paul Heyman got his little seed of some hardcore? We didn't even call it hardcore. We called it concession stand brawls or whatever it is. Anyway, so I gave the guy a little lesson. He just kind of looked at me. I says, go look up those matches and you tell me if I've ever seen a death match live. And then he came back later in the night and he goes, oh, wow, I kind of know you. And then I said, see the scar on my shoulder? And he's like, I said, that came from a light bulb. Really? Y'all had those? I said, no, it fell out of the ceiling after Larry Latham took a chair and whacked me over it. And he reared back and hit the top of the ceiling in Kennett, Missouri. And the bulb fell down and cut me in the shoulder. He just looked at me. So anyhow, Conrad.
It all comes to a head this Sunday on Fight. Don't you dare miss it. It's hashtag pick a fight. I'm going to have a little watch party here at the house. I know Joey Janela is looking to steal Cardona's girl, and that's going to be a whole mess of a situation. Homicide's getting a title shot against the returning John Moxley. I think
Moxley's really cool,
coming back for Game Changer before anybody. Maybe, I'm not even sure. And then you're maybe going to be in the ring with Effie. I hope that he's ready for what he signed up for, because this is a new Jeff Jarrett. This isn't the I'm running my mouth and I got a Dick Dancer outfit on and ho and howdy folks, and you're taking this pretty seriously. And I don't think the world is ready for what they're going to see this Sunday on pay-per-view.
Conrad, did you watch Saturday?
Yeah, of course.
Did you see at the very end of it that
the almost trying to talk it, run his mouth? Yeah.
There were some folks backstage that said, you okay, Jeff? And I just said, yep, I'm fine. So I got a little bit more of that coming. So that guy was like, hey man, we're just having fun here. And I said, I'm not.
Yeah. It's not going to be fun for at least one person this Sunday. It's actually not just on Fight, by the way. You can also check your local cable listings, but Jeff and I would prefer you go to Fight because we're big friends with Mike Weber and
pick a fight
over there. Yeah. Hashtag pick a fight, man. Check it out. Pickaffight.com is the place to go ahead and place your order. By the way, I want to mention this Game Changer stuff. This has been fun. You know, I guess you've had 2 appearances now, and now I don't know what's going to happen on Sunday or what's happening after that, but it's been fun to see you doing your thing back inside the ropes again. Is this something you're looking to do for more of 2022, or you think after you crush Effie Scully and you'll ride off into the sunset?
You know, you have to say, I think I want to ask Jeff anything. What's the favorite thing? There's nothing like stepping between the ropes.
Yeah.
And so look, no, am I doing it full time? No, but I'm gonna pick and choose my spots. I said it last week. I'm really excited. Something about January and kicking things off, but yeah, I'm going to pick and choose my spots. We'll see. We'll see how Sunday goes. You know, they said that Effie told some of his buddies, and that's another. I mean, they think that, hey, folks, go check out episode maybe 3, and I'll tell you about a story where I had a 45 and a 38 and I held Vince McMahon up. But before I did that, before that outlaw did that, I had a what would you call that? Male versus female. What kind of match is that called?
Intergender.
No, intergender. Yes. Yes. They were both. Yeah. Intergender match. Anyway, Effie said that when I hit him with the guitar and I yanked him around the ring with his head still on the guitar, that was unnecessary.
Everything about Effie's unnecessary.
Well, no, I mean, but literally he said that was unnecessary.
Well,
Bless his heart.
I like that he says, a couple of weeks ago, you're not getting me. Effie wants none. Effie is fine. He's singing a different tune now that the other half of Bussy's been dragged around. So
Lucy.
Yeah, whatever. Old Bussy's getting busted.
Well, you get on to me about my enunciation, Idaho and Teeter.
Listen here. Is this match going to be in Colorado? Let's get on to the show.
Please, Lord, we got 88 pages of notes.
Well, there's no way we'll get through them all. We're continuing our story about the creation of the USWA. This is, I guess, part 2, we'll call it, the continuation, picking up where we left off from Daddy Buys Dallas, which we did towards the end of last year. Let's just jump right into it. The Observer would say, since the Channel 11 TV show in Dallas has been devoting nearly 45 minutes to getting over the Memphis guys, it seems probable that the two will eventually exist as one group or as two groups using the same core of main eventers back and forth. We reported incorrectly last week that the Dallas office had closed, but only Erich, Embry, and Bronco Lubitsch are working in the office, and most of the major decisions are now coming from Tennessee. Erich Embry pulled a Robert Fuller and ran the whole show around himself. Scandor Akbar now has a $50,000 bounty on Embry. During an interview, Iceman King Parsons and the Botswana Beast beat up Embry, who juiced and was stretchered out, and it was announced to the crowd he was taken to the hospital. Later in the show, Embry came back and attacked Iceman and Beast and said he refused to get in the ambulance to take him to the hospital and stayed in the building for revenge. That feels pretty Memphis, but it's happening in Dallas. What'd you think of that angle? And do you remember your dad's plan, or did he lay out what the plan for combining both Memphis and world class were going to be?
So a little side note, and I'll probably drop a few things in here as we go along. At lunch, I have lunch with my father once a month. We've got it in our calendars. But he shared some pretty cool sidebars and stories and connected some dots, obviously, that research could not have done. So, the one thing that one of the things he shared was, because I said, like, what was the mindset out of like big picture, small, whatever. He said, Kevin and Kerry and the brothers, but he said it really wasn't just the previous 6 months or 9 months or 12 months, but he says, like, the running last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, maybe even 6 years, was the no-shows. That the territory was built around the Von Erich and the Von Erich name and the brothers, and they had really built an incredible business off Channel 11, the Metroplex area, which included Dallas and Fort Worth, for folks that don't know that. So it's not like they had to drive, the territory days with the Bill Watts from Louisiana to Oklahoma to Mississippi. I mean, there's some legendary 8-10 hour car rides. Well, and the Dallas, they didn't even have to go to San Antonio or even Houston. They literally, Dallas on Friday, Fort Worth on Monday, spot shows. They didn't really have to drive maybe 2 hours, 3 hours a night, but an incredible business, which hindsight's 2020, that meant the talent, namely the Von Erich boys, had a lot of time on their hands because they didn't have to leave till 4 or 5. So, whether it's the disease of addiction or extracurricular activities or whatever it may be, the Von Erichs missed a lot of shows, and it became so bad that, in short, it wasn't bad wrestling. It wasn't really bad ratings. It was people lost faith in the brand.
Consumer confidence was just in the toilet.
Bingo.
Yeah.
You always clean it up real easy with the phrase consumer confidence. They basically had none. So once my father did his due diligence with as quick as he could do it with the attorneys, with other wrestlers, and just making phone call after phone call after phone call. And I'll get into this a little while, but he had multiple conversations with Fritz, but he had one that he said he'll never forget. And I'll just get into it right now. He said, Jerry, I don't believe a word as it relates to the business. I don't believe a word that comes out of Kerry and Kevin's mouth.
Wow.
Yeah. That's tragic to me.
That's a father talking about his sons.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so,
and to be clear, because I want to make, everybody grows and gets better and learns, and we're all doing. So I'm saying all that to say, I know Kerry's no longer with us, but Kevin is, and Kevin is probably a completely different person, but he was probably, as you said, battling some demons of his own. And man, you can't ever judge anybody when they're in that state of mind, when they have the disease of addiction, as you were saying. But unfortunately, it maybe made their own father question whether or not he could trust them, which is unfortunate.
Only on business. It wasn't him how much he loved him, cared for him. And my father, and he said this at lunch, he said, I really wasn't sure if I completely believed him. Like, why is he telling me this? Is this throwing a monkey wrench into something? But so with that being said, when Meltzer reported the whole show built around Erich, I'm sure that's at my father's direction. That is a 101 that I'm going to build the show around somebody that I can count on 100%. Scandor Akbar had been in the territory. It wasn't like he was going to run up and go to Vince. Scandor was the lead heel. Erich was the lead babyface, and that's exactly who they were going with. Scandor was synonymous with the WCCW name because he'd been a heel so long. And so that's really where my dad had the laser focus on. I can count on these guys, and we're going with these guys, and we have to get into because this whole, to me, I think the title of this episode in a lot of ways is the creation of USWA, and we're going to tell the reasons of why.
So chat me up a little bit. Did your dad lay out the vision to you of, okay, son, here's what we're going to do. We're going to run them as two separate territories, but put together a super promotion and run super shows? Or what was the original vision that he laid out to you as a young wrestler, just trying to get your arms around all this?
Well, the two valuable assets were the two TVs, and he wasn't exactly sure how he was going to do that. The short fix was Friday night, we have TV for the syndication at the Sportatorium. So we're going to create revenue on Friday nights. Okay, let me back up. The Tennessee territory was Saturday morning TV, Saturday night in Nashville, Monday Memphis, Tuesday Louisville, Wednesday Evansville. So we looked at the weekend's going to be in Dallas, early part of the week in Tennessee. We're going to sort of have a shared talent. Some folks are going to be based in Dallas. Some folks are going to be based in Memphis and Nashville, but there wasn't a master plan. He knew he's going to have to be flexible. He knew Channel 11 was going to have some ups and downs. We never, and I could sort of confirm this. We never really got to the point because it never had a settling point. Of course, the rebranding took place, but as far as up and running and really, okay, this is how we're going to run things, it was always a little bit in a constant change because we'll get into the lawsuit and all that mess.
So you guys ran a world-class Thanksgiving show on November 25th. Of course, that's in Dallas, and it drew $11,200 at the gate, which was the largest actual Sportatorium gate in a while. And of course, everyone was pleased. The main event saw the two biggest stars, Kerry Von Erich and Jerry Lawler. Kerry's going to pin Jerry clean in the middle of a cage match. And Lawler used the chain, it's said here, for comedy purposes. And Kerry got the chain away and used it on Lawler to set up the pin. Quote, I was told the match was okay. And the Kevin Von Erich versus Super Black Ninja cage match was canceled because Kevin no-showed. So do you remember, were you on that card, Thanksgiving, world class in the Sportatorium?
Well, I mean, I'm going to assume that I was. Did Dave or Wade or any in the recaps? I know it's funny how Meltzer reports the chain being the comedy. It's, if you ask Lawler, did he use it for comedy? No, he used it to get heat, but
right.
I get stylistically, it's different. During this time, I feel like I was on just about everything, as far as both territories.
The card that night was Steve Cox beating Jimmy Jack Funk, Erich Embry going to a double DQ with the Botswana Beast, and then beating Iceman King Parsons by DQ. Then the Samoan SWAT team would do a double DQ with Michael Hayes and Jeff Jarrett.
There you go.
And King Parsons would defeat Erich Embry. The main event, though, was Kerry and Jerry. And as we said, Kevin was supposed to be there. I guess what I was driving at is, do you remember having any sort of conversation or indication, or did you get a vibe from Jerry Lawler about, we've talked a lot about your dad, but Jerry Lawler was the partner in a lot of your dad's business for a long, long time. What did he think of the state of Dallas, being in the sportatorium, the Von Erich boys, just the nature of this deal, say on a Thanksgiving night where you have a pretty good house here, $11,000.
Well, I mean, Lawler, and this is, you know, he wasn't the King and JR sitting ringside at Monday Night Raw. This is prior to that.
Yeah.
So he is, you know, a businessman, but he I guess the first thing, he was an in-ring talent during this stage.
He's a top guy.
He's a top guy. In-ring talent would be his priority at this stage. He also had made a boatload of money just wrestling Monday nights in Memphis. So he's traveling much more, but he didn't mind it, but he always wanted it to, you know, mean something. But look, he knew the opportunity. He knew Channel 11. He knew that there could be, well, he obviously knew just the upside of just the whole dynamic of Dallas and Fort Worth and just opening up a new business, so to speak.
I guess what I'm driving at is, I know Jerry Lawler now, you know, in the last, I don't know, 5 years or so. And Jerry Lawler now is like the most responsible human being that ever was. And the rap on him is, you know, lips that touch alcohol will never touch mine. He's a teetotaler, no drugs, no alcohol, all about business. Don't get me wrong, loves to have fun, and we know what kind of fun he enjoys. But is this something where he has any patience or tolerance or understanding? Is he angling? Is he aiming? Or sometimes wrestling becomes the boys versus the office.
Yep.
So when a Kevin doesn't show up and he no shows, does he lean like, well, you know, who knows? Or is it more, damn it, this is, you know, they're messing with my money? Well,
he would never say it. Well, I wouldn't say never, but I would be willing to bet that he would look my father in the eye and say, just can't it. You can't do it. You know, it's just I hate to say a different generation, but no shows kill you.
Yes.
It is the absolute, a bad match, weather, bad TV, bad angle, but whatever it is, nothing compares to, oh, they're not here. People got in their car to come see Kevin Von Erich and they paid their money. It is the instant feeling of, I want my money back. It's just bad all around. And Lawler had no tolerance for it.
That's
None.
where I was driving at. I just felt like he would have no patience whatsoever.
Oh God, no. None.
The idea being, if I can get my ass all the way here from Tennessee,
hell yes.
And we're putting our, you know,
and your owner, and that's what was so bizarre. Kevin and Kerry were owners.
Here's what comes out next. Kevin and Kerry are both in Japan as of this writing. It's questionable how much longer Kevin can continue to wrestle, as he had a CAT scan, which revealed extensive scar tissue in the brain as a result of so many concussions. And this is back before we knew what we know now about concussions. So Meltzer in parentheses here, and again, this is 1988, so let's cut him some slack, says, basically the boxer punch drunk syndrome. I believe one doctor even recommended brain surgery, although he isn't going to have it. He's extremely susceptible to concussions now, which makes wrestling extremely hazardous. I just hope he believes in himself in Japan, or he behaves himself in Japan when he's in with Hashimoto. So of course, Dave throws his 2 cents about Japanese wrestling in, but I want to know, did you hear that maybe Kevin was having some brain issues in this era, or not so much?
I mean, I'll say this. I took it with a grain of salt because it was locker room chatter, you know, and I certainly wasn't a part of a conversation he may or may not have had. I think doubtful that he'd had with my father about it, but no.
The Observer would also pop up a couple of weeks later to say, when I was in Las Vegas, the only topic of conversation was what happened with Kerry at the previous AWA show with his amputation being exposed. I don't know many details on the subject other than there were at least 4 wrestlers at World Class who knew Kerry's had his foot amputated, so it wasn't a big secret as I thought, though it shocked the hell out of most in wrestling, including Jerry Jarrett. Do you remember having a conversation or just casually coming up with your dad about Kerry's foot situation?
Even after Kerry passed, I went out there. I could ask him, like, what is the deal? Like, does he? And my father was like, hell, I don't know. I have no confirmation. But then he's like, yes. But I'm like, so what is the secret? But then you get into all those stories about athletic commissions and, oh, he can't wrestle with the prosthetic and this and that. And then, of course, we're talking 88. So we're not that far removed from the kayfabe era, even though Vince McMahon came out in the mid 80s and said, we are scripted entertainment, folks. I ain't paying the tax in Jersey, but it's still, and I know our listeners today, it's almost unfathomable how for us to have it become this conversation, but it was still such a hidden, like in 88, if me and you were having this podcast, how would we be? Would we be blackballed? Yes.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's such a different era and a different time that everything was so secretive. And I am in the business, in the dressing room. Hell, in a minute, we're going to talk about, we were tag team champion partners. And I never saw the prosthetic foot ever.
You know, what's funny is as you said that about, if we were doing this in 88, would we be blackballed? I recently had breakfast with someone I won't mention, but they've never done any sort of behind the curtain type conversation. And this is a guy who, I don't know, he's probably your age or whatever. And he said, when we sat down for breakfast, hey, I got to admit, I was a little nervous coming to talk to you today. I love when you said that about 1988. I would have been like persona non grata. You guys would have hated me. Whatever you do, don't talk to Conrad. That tickles me.
Well, before we decided to do this podcast, that's one of the things that I think kind of attracted you to this My World Story. I had never done any of these. I mean,
none of it.
None.
Yeah.
And look, even, I was schooled and taught and prepped and doing live radio. Oh, what you do is real fake. Hey, you just sort of learn how to transition in and out of the conversation. You just didn't have it.
Yeah.
Period. Wow.
Well, I'm glad we are. Let's talk about something else that's being observed in Matt Watch at the time. The Channel 11 2-hour show, which is taped on Saturday mornings at the Sportatorium, is going to be put into syndication under the name US Championship Wrestling, although the 2-hour version will be edited down to a 1-hour show. The show will mainly replace Wild West Wrestling in the markets that Ken Mantell's very old Wild West tapings are still repeated, and World Class is making a push to get back on ESPN. It's amazing to watch the Channel 11 show as they have Frank Dusek and Chris Adams on both, asking fans to call them up so they can promote spot shows in quote unquote your town. And Dusek and Adams are working for different promotions. Interesting. This becomes a bit of a mess. Who is like your dad's right hand as far as handling the office of, this mess of who's on first? Because there's a lot of moving parts here, not now just for one promotion, but for two promotions and your dad's long distance. And I realize as I'm laying all that out, some of our listeners probably think, well, what's the big deal? I just want to make sure everybody understands there's no FaceTime. There's no cell phones. There's no internet. There's no email. You can't send a text message. If you call a guy's phone and he don't answer, well, I hope he calls me back. Maybe he's got an answering machine. And that's kind of it.
For sure.
It's a different animal, but I'm wondering administratively, who's helping your dad sort of be his right-hand man?
Erich Embry.
Okay.
I mean, pretty much Erich was the eyes, ears, voice. Now, Frank Dusek helped in the office. Bronco Lubitsch was around. My older brother moved out there for a time frame. I don't know if you know that. He helped.
No, I didn't know that.
In the box office. Yeah, he got an apartment out there, my older brother. But at the end of the day, it was Erich. Erich had been around the industry. He knew the business inside and out. So he was his right-hand man creatively, bookkeeping. But on the two promoter deal, and this is where it's my father looked at it and says, look, we've got to get a crew and we've got to pay them and they've got to eat because Friday nights ain't going to feed there for the whole week. So he was wanting to get as many shows up and running. So Chris Adams was willing to run spot shows, Frank Dusek, and we were just trying to literally get as many towns running so the talent would have places to work and get their paychecks.
Um, I didn't know about your brother. Had your brother helped with your dad's wrestling business back in Tennessee?
Never.
What made him have an interest in Dallas?
Trying to think, because he went to Georgia Tech, Atlanta, and then he has worked in Atlanta. He worked in DC for a while. He worked in Dallas, not in the wrestling business, but he's in the financial, has always been in the financial services business. And I guess at the time, I forget how it all aligned, but he got an apartment out there and was working the box office. And yeah, that was his only time to work in the wrestling industry. And it was in, the business side in Dallas.
So it's reported in Matt Watch that gentleman Chris Adams had worked a deal out with your dad to promote his own shows in the Dallas area. And for some odd reason, he's even been plugging requests for, the local promoter deal on the KTVT World Class show. Why would your dad agree to let Chris Adams run his own shows? Was your dad just getting a piece of it and felt like he needed to do it to pacify him, or he didn't have any confidence, or it was more than he could handle? What's the deal on that?
My dad, as you were sort of getting in, he wanted partners in business. He wanted folks that wanted to make a full-time living out of the wrestling industry. And if he could create a syndicated wrestling show, that was where his money was going to be. So if he could find 5 spot show promoters, he wanted them. Chris was a big star, had a hell of a run. He could still go in the ring. He was still a full-time performer, going to open up a wrestling school, which we know developed Stone Cold Steve Austin, among others. But Chris was a guy that looked at business as a business. And so he wanted him to run and was going to help him. I think maybe there was a booking fee, but I have a feeling in those days, my dad probably waived the booking fee. And that would be a 10% on top of all the boys pay just to administrative. Nobody makes any money off that, but you got to pay bookkeepers. So anyhow, that was,
I want to break up what we're talking about here, though, because we're talking about how there's 2 commercials being run inside the show. Frank Dusek is promoting the spot shows for The Office, and Chris Adams is running spot shows on his own, but he's using world-class talent. And maybe the idea is this keeps the guys working, blah, blah, blah. But effectively, they're sort of competing with themselves here for fundraiser events and things like that. Because if a fan calls in and says, boy, we'd like to have a show down here at the gym, well, that's probably a fundraiser show for the Boys and Girls Club or the band or some shit, right?
Yeah. And the thing was, my dad knew that let's focus on Friday nights on Dallas, and then we got into our TV shows on Saturday morning. That's what he wanted to focus in as it went as far as operating the day-to-day business. Like I said, he wanted Chris Adams and 3 or 4 others. We never got there, but folks that would dive in and run shows and go out and promote them and roll up their sleeves and get marketing and get radio. Because Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area, I lived out there. It is a big, it's 2 major cities side by side and lots of small communities. It's a huge area.
I want to mention the Christmas show happened in Dallas, 12/25, a near sellout, 3,000 fans, pretty good gate too, 14,800 fans. One of the things I want to mention is World Class would have their tag titles defended here. The Samoan SWAT team would retain, beating Michael Hayes and Kerry Von Erich. Hayes does a clean job, and this is Hayes' last match in Dallas, as he's going to finish up by working spot shows the rest of the week and then start in January for the NWA. What do you remember about Michael Hayes saying, okay, time to go do something else?
I mean, when you talked about that thing, he was over. The first thing that comes to my mind is Freebird Michael Hayes, charismatic, but in the sportatorium, he's over.
Yeah.
I mean, a hell of a reaction. That I was trying to jog my memory. I don't remember any big, like, oh man, Michael's leaving, whether there was hard feelings or left in the middle of the night. I just kind of think he went his separate ways. But I think I shared on the Daddy Buys Dallas episode, Michael was one. That's for me. I can remember, I'll never forget, in Lawler's dressing room, you go down the hall, first right, Jerry's dressing room, first left. I can remember that's the first time I heard it come out of someone's mouth was Michael telling Lawler, man, we need help. And they would call my dad Little Man. That was his nickname, Little Man. Do you think Little Man would come out and help things out? And Lawler's like, I don't know. We got to talk to him. I mean, that's like the first. I didn't hear it from my dad. I didn't hear it from Von Erich. I didn't hear it. I heard it out of Michael Hayes' mouth. And so when he transitioned and went to work, and it's funny how you refer to it as he went to work for the NWA. It wasn't even WCW at that time.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
I want to mention, I mean, I guess technically that is, people are still calling it the NWA, but Ted Turner had already purchased them here. Either way, let's talk about.
Let me ask you this just real quick, because you on your other podcast. When did it turn WCW?
88, end of November of 88.
So we're right here.
Yeah,
it literally just turned WCW the month before.
Around the exact same time that Fritz is throwing the towel in, and your dad is buying out here in Dallas, Ted Turner is buying out the Crockett's.
Wow,
it's a crazy time in the wrestling business.
Wow, enormous transition era.
And the AWA is sucking hind teeth to the point that World Class is scheduled to return to ESPN, and they're going to alternate in the afternoon time slot with the AWA. Your dad had to be super motivated. I know you were as a young person to get on ESPN, right?
Oh yeah. Afternoon weekday shot, 3:00 Central. It's
hard to contextualize how big that was, but this is the early days of cable. And the idea that there was a 24/7 sports channel was revolutionary. And I realize now, if you've got DirecTV like me, you've got 182 sports channels, but you didn't really back then. So this is a game changer. The CWA, which is the name of the promotion that we always just refer to as Memphis,
yes,
is off of FNN/The Score indefinitely as they rearrange their schedule. That's directly reported from the Torch. I'm laying that out here because I'm trying to express that now your dad's only national exposure is through Dallas and syndication and on ESPN, with the Memphis tapes no longer airing nationally on FNN The Score, which had pretty strong cable coverage by 1988 standards. So it's a big deal if you know that you're going to be losing this FNN, that you can, hey, we got ESPN now. Let's keep going here.
Yeah, I was going to say, the revenue it wasn't a monster. My father, he reiterated, he knew there was big revenue to be made out of the USW, what would become the USWA. The CWA syndication wasn't a big moneymaker. That's what I'm trying to say.
Talk to me about Steve Cox. He's fairly abruptly gonna quit the promotion here. Any memories of Steve Cox?
Very little. Good, decent talent. I just wasn't in the ring with him maybe once or twice. But if I remember correctly, there was, I think he went on to NWA/WCW.
He did some global stuff. He did some UWF stuff, and he did some of his own little promoting here and there, but or spot shows and whatnot. But I want to talk about the reports at the time. The Observer would say there's lots of talent problems with the departure of Michael Hayes and the abrupt quitting of the promotion by Steve Cox. But more importantly, the Torch would write, Kevin Von Erich stopped wrestling with no formal announcement. I guess they'll just let him fade away. Do you remember that coming to a head and being more to it than what was reported?
Well, and I don't know if this was the specific incident or whatever it may be, but I am certain that there came a point, because I was one of the boys, but also obviously my father promoter, and Erich's booking a card, that my father said, quit booking Kevin. He's not going to show, so no retiring, none of that. And he really wasn't even mad. It was, he's not going to show. Do not book Kevin. And Kerry, don't, make sure if you're going to book him, we know he's going to be there. Talk to him. They were really very different during this time frame, because we're just, I want to make sure I'm saying that ebbs and flows of life. But during this time, they were incredibly different to do business with. I can remember Lawler saying that, my father saying that, and Erich, and because, you know, Kerry worked pretty consistent here for a while in the storylines. Took some time off, and there was a plan to bring him back. And yeah, but because Erich, but anyway, Kevin was leave him off. We'll send him his money.
So World Class is also going to make the news when they're saying that they're going to start working on picking up their syndication, which is obviously the next big step to growing. And Tony Falk actually makes some headlines in the Observer at the very end of January of 1989, when it's revealed that he's now working in the Dallas front office. Tony Falk was pretty important to your early days, and now he's finding himself, I guess, as a soldier for your dad here in Dallas. What can you tell us about him in Dallas?
Well, I mean, you know, he had my first match, Shawn Michaels' first. He had a lot of first matches of guys, but a great hand, you know, as they say in the business. But Tony was very loyal, and again, I'm going to use the consistency. He's going to show up. He's going to get it done. But and Erich and Tony were friends, and I don't know how it came about or who suggested what, but Tony wanted to work in the office. We wanted him to work in the office. And then we was like, okay, to have some consistency, let him referee. So Tony started refereeing to make a consistent paycheck. So he stepped out of the ring, quit wrestling for a bit, and became a referee. Great dude.
As we get into February of 89, Meltzer would say, they say Dallas is dead, but on January 27th, more than 8,000 fans paid to see wrestling. The WWF had a show at the convention center drawing 4,800 folks and 58,000. And World Class ran a cut price show drawing 3,300 fans and a $10,000 gate to the Sportatorium. And you might be wondering, what's a cut rate show or a cut price show? $5 tickets, $3 tickets, and $1 tickets. This is an old school promoter tactic. When somebody tries to come into your territory, you try to sabotage that show however you can, even if it means giving your own shit away. I like to see your dad competing with Vince. What can you tell me about your dad's philosophy on having to cut the prices to run off some competition?
Well, it's not lose momentum. It's that consumer confidence that you referred to earlier, the brand loyalty. And, you know, it's like Vince, they knew exactly what they were doing. We ran on Fridays. So Dallas could have been routed and run on Saturday easily, or Sunday or Thursday. Those weekend runs, it's just they specifically scheduled, because in the city of Dallas for years and years and years and years, Friday nights are wrestling night. And so WWF, okay, we're going to go in there and run on Friday. So, you know, I hate to even say old school mentality, just that promoter mentality. All right. They really took the first shot by scheduling it on a Friday night. So how do we counter promote? Okay, let's counter promote by making sure we have a full house and keep our fans happy and loyal. And it's not really talking about grow our fan base. It's being loyal to them and giving them as many reasons as possible not to go watch WWF and to go watch WCCW. Fun to talk about to this day, though.
This is a crazy story right here. The Dallas Times Herald ran a two-page story regarding Kerry's foot and the incident in Las Vegas, with quotes from Dave Meltzer and Mike Tenay. A lot of folks are wanting Kerry to simply acknowledge everything on TV and get ahead of this, but nobody really expects that to happen. And then Kerry is asked to acknowledge the Dallas Times Herald article about his foot, but he absolutely refused. Meltzer would say, speaking of the article, whatever I said was obviously misinterpreted by the reporter, because it came out as, quote, Dave Meltzer, who chronicled the bout in Wrestling Observer, says the Von Erichs assure him Kerry hasn't lost his foot and have promised to send a photo proving it. Process what we're saying here. a legitimate newspaper. I'm not bashing the newsletters, but I'm just saying the freaking Dallas newspaper runs a 2-page story about the dude losing his foot. And now people are saying, nope. And we got pictures to prove he's got his foot. What is this, Jeff?
And you just glossed over Dave Meltzer and Mike Tenay.
Yeah.
Now, folks, Mike's one of my best friends, and professionally, he did so much for me, and absolutely the voice of TNA for a lot of years. Fantastic. But this is prior to TNA and prior to WCW, the Professor.
This is 1989.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just think that's fascinating too. But
he had a radio show in Vegas, which is why he would have been quoted. And, and of course, the industry Bible at that point, the industry trade, if you will, is Meltzer's newsletter. So I get why Dallas, and kudos to Dallas for finding Tenay and finding Meltzer. But
yes,
we got proof. We got a picture of his foot. What? What is this? I mean, this is not National Enquirer, or is it? It's just,
it is. Phenomenal. But you know, it's like some things never change. You look at, oh my gosh, there's no true journalism. Well, wait a minute. Has there ever been true journalism? In 1989, the Dallas, one of the top 5 daily newspapers in the country, and they're wanting to validate whether a sports entertainer / professional wrestler has a foot or not. I mean, what? And this is the home of the Dallas Cowboys, if you will.
It's crazy. Who, by the way, took a L this past weekend in the playoffs. Did you see that coming?
No. Double J's Bigs missed that one. But you know, gosh, the NFL,
there's so much parity in that league. You can't.
It's you ain't well, and you know, yes, it's just everything about that league. It's made, the game is made for TV. Everybody wears a helmet, so they kind of, you're fighting for you emotionally are tied to the brand, not a particular player. Brady's an anomaly. Some folks are anomalies, but just the Dallas Cowboy brand is so freaking strong and gets a monster number every week, even on their down years, and them to go out this early, the networks, specifically Fox and our buddies over there, are going, son of a.
Yeah, but it's the same old Cowboys. Let's talk about same old.
They're out of the playoffs, and anyway.
Week 1, you know, next verse, same as the first. Romo, Dak, whatever. Sit your ass down.
Go ahead.
Kerry Von Erich and Jeff Jarrett are going to capture the world-class world tag belts, as opposed to simply the world-class tag belts, from Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden on March 12th in Fort Worth. This is going to be Jimmy Golden's final night working for Jarrett Promotions. He's moving on. Originally, though, it's supposed to be Kevin and Kerry winning the tag titles. But what do you know? Kevin no-shows. And there's a lot of heat about it. And there's actually talk of no longer booking him. It's reported here in the Observer, while Jarrett did put a clause in when he took control of the company late last year that Kevin or Kerry could be fired if they no-showed while still maintaining their piece of the company. It's hard for me to believe they'll actually get rid of him, although no doubt they aren't going to put him in important positions on the cards. The card drew a gate of $12,000 to $15,000, which is a success for the first show at Will Rogers Coliseum since Labor Day. Here's the actual phrase from the contract between your dad and the Von Erichs. Quote, any failure by Kerry to make a scheduled event in which he has been booked will constitute a breach of this agreement by Kerry unless Kerry is confirmed sick or injured to the satisfaction of the corporation's general manager. Of course, Jerry Jarrett is the general manager stipulated by the agreement. What do you remember about this? You find yourself being tagged in, if you will. Does your dad come break the news and say, good news, bad news? Bad news is Kevin's not here. Good news is you're teaming with Kerry and y'all are winning the straps.
If I remember correctly, my father wasn't even in the building that night, and maybe one of the payphone deals that Erich had to go, let me go call little man and figure this out. But, you know, and I probably obviously just jumped ahead. I just know that Kevin, and it was, and I know we got into it on Daddy Buys Dallas, but talking about throwing two guys, two talents, Kevin and Kerry Von Erich, a lifeline, they were out of business.
Yeah.
And okay, so we're going to pull the nose up on this thing, and we're going to spend and I say as a family, really, my father's the one who earned the money. So he's going to spend his money to get the company out of debt. Okay. And that gives us the opportunity. And Kevin had 20%, Kerry had 20%, my father had 60%. So you're going to have the opportunity to keep a consistent paycheck, and they can't get in the car and drive 30 minutes to Will Rogers.
Yeah.
It's just, and so very disheartening.
I'm not asking this to be funny. You know, we know more now about mental health now than we did back then by a multiple. Do you think he was suffering from depression? Do you think the concussions had got him? I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot of guys who are going to get put through the paces in pro wrestling or contact sports like football that are going to have, you know, we're going to discover later that they had some serious CTE issues. Or do you think it was simply, it's not a mental health thing, he just liked to party?
Obviously, I have no validation whether it was CTE, substance abuse issues.
I'm just asking your 2 cents.
My 2 cents would be,
not then, but now. You know what I mean? As somebody who understands addiction, I'm not saying what did you think then? I'm asking what do you think now? Yes.
I think at the very top of the list, Kevin Von Erich had never worked for anybody except his father.
Yes. That's tough to get your head around.
Yes. He was not going to work for Jerry Jarrett. Period. End of story. I'm not going to work for another promoter. I'm working for myself or for my father. It was very clear.
And working for your dad is like working for yourself. I mean, it is. It's considered the family business.
It's the family business.
So that comes to an end. The Observer would write, Kevin Von Erich is gone for now. I don't believe he was officially fired, but I'm told he won't be booked for any cards at any time in the future. The promotion got fed up with Kevin when he no-showed the March 12th Star Wars card in Fort Worth when he was supposed to win the tag titles. Kerry was nearly fired this weekend as well. On Saturday morning, they taped TV at the Sportatorium from 10 a.m. to noon, and Kerry was supposed to wrestle the Botswana Beast. Wrestlers are supposed to arrive at 9 a.m. Kerry didn't arrive until 11:45, at which time Chris Adams was already in the ring against the Beast, and they had just run Kerry right out into street clothes to show he was there and claimed that Iceman King Parsons flattened his tires as the excuse for the television audience. They threatened Kerry that he'd been gone alongside Kevin if he pulled another stunt like that. Do you remember this show?
I do.
What can you tell us about it?
The scatterbrained, and I think he got there late, and they were literally had already had plan B in place. I don't exactly remember what plan B was but Kerry walks in the back door. So everybody, I would say everybody, but it's easy. He pulls in the parking lot. It's not like the wrestling fans, you tell one, well, oh, Kerry's here. They knew he was in the building. So now we got to go back to plan A, but plan A is really not going to work because they don't have to kind of go over everything. And, one of those things, little man and Embry, like, all right, Kerry, we're going to send you out, and here's the excuse and just making chicken salad, candidly. But I remember the whole, how can we do business with guys that are not going to be around and show up? My dad was, I would say at the end of his rope, but quickly becoming, we can't rebuild this territory on no shows. It's what killed it in the first place. That's why he was so adamant way before this. It's black and white how to put a business out.
There's an old expression in the South. There's no stress like money stress. Let's talk about what Matt Watch wrote here. The apparent dismissal of Kevin stems from Von Erich's failure to make several recent shows for which he was booked. One source told us, quote, Jerry simply had enough and he warned Kevin several times, end quote. The firing comes on the heels of Von Erich's recent personal troubles in which he lost a luxury home to creditors. One source told a reconciliation could occur, but would have to be initiated by Von Erich. Reliable sources tell us Kerry Von Erich nearly fell prey to the same fate as his brother. As a matter of the public records from Tarrant County out in Texas, it shows that Kevin and his wife defaulted on a $176,000 mortgage from October 23rd, 1984, not long before this. And the foreclosure was actually filed on February 7th, 1989. So, just to pile on, you've got a struggling business. Now you're struggling financially. Maybe you've got some substance stuff. Certainly you've got some brain head stuff going on. And now those financial woes are coming home in every way possible. You're losing your family home with you and your wife. So not only is it tough to deal with that, but man, that added stress on a relationship. Shit, man, if it wasn't for bad luck, Kevin would have like none at all here.
He was ugly. And, again, I'm going to go back to, we weren't, I don't think we were as the business. I don't think he was back to sea level yet. My dad had invested, and
yeah, it was still underwater.
It's still underwater, and still really wanted to put this rebranding and USWA and the syndication and everything that went with it. God almighty, what a complete mess.
As we're getting to like the spring here, we're cruising on into April of 89. What is your week like? How many days a week are you in Memphis? When are you going to Dallas? How are you getting there? Just
wish I knew I could remember when we, because, Memphis every Monday. So live in Nashville, up and back to Memphis by car, 220 down, 220 back.
You had an apartment in Nashville.
Condo. Yep. Small.
Are you with Jill yet? Are you dating? Are you okay? So you dating Jill, and y'all share an apartment. You live together.
I was on the road so much, so a hybrid. I call it a hybrid situation.
She spent the night some. Yeah.
Yeah. She's a freshman in college.
I got you.
Yeah. So she was in school full time. I'd have to go. Yeah. She graduated 88. So 89. So she's a freshman in college playing basketball. Yeah. She went 4 years of college. She played 1 year. So anyway, traveling. So Memphis on Monday, Louisville on Tuesday, Evansville, Indiana on Wednesday. I think this is pre-bus trips. My dad, because he was out there a lot, he rented an apartment in Irving, Texas on 183. And so a lot of times I would fly out Thursday morning.
From Nashville to Dallas.
And he had a car out there that he just bought a car and parked it out there. So Thursday would be a spot show somewhere in the Metroplex. Friday, TV. And depending upon, I missed, there was an era where I missed a lot of Saturday morning Memphis TVs and did Dallas TV. Then we got into that situation where we did Friday night in Dallas, took the bus immediately after Friday, and we're back at Memphis TV. So I think that comes later in the episode or later during this time frame. But during this time frame, I want to say that I was doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday in Dallas, and a lot of times I'd either do a spot show in the Dallas area or fly back in, because once a month we were running Jackson, Tennessee. We were running shows on Sundays back then. The spot show business in 88, 89, man, we'd have to do some research, but there was a time when our Nashville clearance was on. We moved up from we moved on to the ABC affiliate, and it got down into your neck of the woods, North Alabama, but we ran Lawrence, a bunch of spot shows. So we were running 7 days a week in Tennessee and 4 days a week roughly in Texas. So I was working 7 nights a week, but the schedule during this time, I was doing TVs in Memphis. In Dallas.
So I want to mention the travel piece. When you're flying from Nashville out to Dallas, are you flying Southwest? Is that a different airline?
So to get Bill Dundee one day, when it all clicked in. So, cause he made some of these trips. So Dallas to from Nashville to Dallas, the round trip direct, cause that's hub to hub at that time. Cause American was in a hub in Nashville. So this is where I'm connecting. The prices were outrageous. So what did Jerry Jarrett do? Oh, we got us a connector in Houston. So we would fly from, how did you know to even ask? This is bizarre. It's just random. Anyway, from Nashville to Houston, and we had literally like 28 minutes to change planes, and boom, right into Dallas. And so that was the route. Nashville, Houston, Houston, Dallas, and then back home the same way.
If you would have driven it, it's a damn near 10-hour drive. But when you guys did the bus trip in a car, it's 6.5 hours. So in a bus, it's every bit of 7. So if you're finishing, and I know we're jumping around a little bit.
Dallas to Memphis.
Yeah.
That's about 8.5.
By bus, you mean maybe?
Yes.
Okay. Well, also too, I'm just saying, I don't know exactly where the buildings are, but from the center of Dallas to the center of Memphis, Google says it's 6.5 hours. I'm like, by bus, it's at least 30 minutes more.
Oh, it's
sure.
eight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The hierarchy here is trying to do something about the fact that at the TV tapings, more and more fans are cheering the heels and loudly doing negative chants at the faces, and Erich Embry in particular. What do you remember about that? Where, for whatever reason, is this just to the point now? You know, these dyed in the wool world class fans, if you ain't a Von Erich, we ain't cheering type of deal.
So during the research, I read all this and it jarred some memories. Again, I was definitely not a newsletter weekly reader. I knew Dave's existed and some other things, and there was discussion. But again, hell, we're still in the era that the Dallas Times is wanting to find out if Kerry, I mean, we're still in the era of kayfabe for the most part.
We need a picture of the foot.
Oh my gosh. So with that being said, my father would always half-ass rib, but I'll also be serious, because he would have me this, because in Memphis studio on Saturday mornings, that would be not the same crowd. It would be, you know, there would be a lot of turnover, but every now and then you would get the males, we'll say 18 to 25, that wanted to boo the baby faces. I get it now, but back then, and so every now and then you would have some people in the Memphis studio. I mean, I'm talking about right when I first started, before I started, and Lawler would always know how to just silence them. But new guys, this is a good sidebar. New guys that come into the territory, sometimes we'll call them, back in those days, a heel fan could really throw some of the young guys, throw them off their game. Well, and my dad would always say, don't have rabbit ears. And rabbit ears are just let it go in. Do not play to the vocal minority. Just let it go. Well, in the weekly cadence of Dallas every Friday and every Saturday, there became a faction. Even in the TNA Asylum days, we had literally the heels section that loved Raven and loved the heels and hated babyface Jeff. But anyway, and other baby faces. But during this time, there was a faction that, look, in their very core, they were probably Kevin and Kerry Von Erich fans. And as you just sort of kind of alluded to, they didn't want to see Erich Embry as the babyface. And so they were booing him. Chris Adams had an issue. They were booing him. And so my father would tell them, guys, don't have rabbit ears. Let them go. Well, it became an issue, not major. I know it made good newsletter chatter, but there were certain TVs that had Erich or Chris or whoever not played into it, it would have been a non-issue. But when you give them the attention, you're putting them on front center like that. You see a couple of times on WWE would just remove the signs and let it go. Just look, we're putting on a TV show and we're telling our stories. That's what we're paid to do. I think recently in AWA, somebody removed a sign, which made that story become exponentially bigger.
Oh, you said AWA, but you mean the AEW Nyla Rose?
Yeah, that thing. I get it. I mean, it makes for good clickbait and all that kind of stuff. But my point being, a heel fan, by giving them attention, it just tells their story, not the one you're trying to tell.
It feeds into it more. Yeah, for sure.
Big time. So yeah, and this was going on with Erich and Chris.
Let's go to the next week. Lots of fans in the CWA area now realize Lawler is still defending the title in Dallas that he lost in Memphis. Since the world-class show airs in Memphis, it's bad enough that Lawler is a heel in one place and face in the other when the different TVs run in the same city. But even worse is the same promotion is doing this mess. Anyway, from what I'm told, in Memphis, they have completely destroyed all credibility of the title. They're now saying Lawler's world title is recognized by the United States Wrestling Alliance. So this is the first time I remember hearing the differentiating term, the different name for the promotion, the USWA. But this feels like a major blunder of, hey, he lost the title in Memphis, but he still got it in Dallas. And I guess when there's sort of a separation of church and state, if you will, that's okay. But when they both air in Memphis, is your dad pissed off about this? Does your dad not take it seriously? Is he like, well, that's wrestling, or what's your take on that?
I used to remember that because I was, I'd been in the business 4 years. And my father wasn't the only person I talked to, whether it was Frank Morrell or other seasoned vets or old timers or whatever. It was always a topic of discussion. And I would hear a very young, impressionable, wanting to lick my chops in the creative space and in the promoter space, trying to figure out what really makes sense. And it depended upon what day of the week. If Lawler's in Memphis, it don't matter. Out in Dallas, it was very confusing. And I think people even listening to this are going, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, in Memphis, if you were a wrestling fan, you could watch Lawler be a champion on one show. And then on another show, click channels, and there weren't 400. There were maybe 30 or 40, but still there weren't 400. You go on another wrestling show, which wrestling fans found, that exact same title, he's not the champ. And it's supposed to be, both of them are supposed to be current.
And he's a good guy on one TV, a bad guy on another. I mean, clearly your dad needed a continuity guy, right? Is that wrong to say?
Well, the transition period of launching the USWA syndication was kicking them in the ass, and they did not get their ducks in a row. I mean, now it's easy to say that hindsight's 20. They knew they were doing it while they were doing it. It wasn't really a continuity. They were like, how are we going to get around this? Because it was best for him to be a heel in Dallas and a babyface in Memphis. And Lawler wanted to be a babyface in Memphis. So,
but why not just air the Dallas TV in Memphis is what I'm asking.
On WMC?
Like both shows air in Memphis. Why air a show that doesn't support your local Memphis market, that contradicts what they're seeing on a weekly basis? I don't think I would air that. I would recut that show somehow.
I don't think we had the ability to recut it. It's what went out on the syndication feed. You know, it goes up in the satellite, you download it at the station.
So you weren't bicycling tapes to local stations at this point, is what you're saying?
Not in syndication. No, it was the master tape in Dallas. And in those days, send it up on a satellite. You know, they pick the show up if it airs on Saturday, pick it up Friday at 7 or whatever it is and record. And that's what aired the next day. It's a mess.
It is a mess. And it's not like your dad wasn't engaged. I guess you're saying it's a technology piece. It's not like he wasn't paying attention. There was just no way to fix it. You just had to power through.
Tried to serve two masters. Easy to say today, hindsight's 2020, but you could. The thing was the heel baby face. They were locally promoting with a national brand.
When this happens, it creates a mess. And Matt Wunsch would write, Jarrett has spent so much time in Dallas attempting to salvage what's remaining of world class, which, because of its TV network, is more lucrative. But now his personal attention has been away from the CWA. To a degree, observers say it is one reason for the recent departure of Randy Hales, who two sources told us had become Jarrett's alleged scapegoat for the Memphis problems. I think it's fair to say that your dad saw the vision and saw the value of Dallas. And so rightfully, he's trying to grow. This is the old bird in the hand, one in the bush, but man, that's the only way to do it, is to grow. And you see this a lot of times in organizations where you're trying to recruit, even like, for instance, in a sales organization. Yeah, you've got your top guy here who's done a great job for you for a long time. But now if you have an opportunity to recruit a new sales stud, well, he might be able to negotiate a pretty good deal because you're desperate to grow. You really want that growth. And I get how that would happen, but it is curious that Randy Hales is pegged as the scapegoat. And it almost makes me wonder, who did Randy Hales call and tell that to? Did he have Steve Beverly's number at Matt Watch? I mean,
Steve's a Jackson, Tennessee guy, right?
I'm not sure.
I think so. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure there was communications. Yes, it's
What
interesting.
can you tell us about Randy Hales? We don't hear that name a lot.
Well, I'm just trying to think. That's why I was saying he was a scapegoat. Randy had a personal situation come up at one time that made him step away from the business. Later, he got into managing and actually owning.
By the way, you're exactly right. Jackson, Tennessee.
Yeah. But Randy got into the management of Sonic drive-ins. But in '89, so Randy, just a quick little synopsis. He started out selling programs in the '70s in his hometown of Jonesboro, Arkansas. So he started out literally as a program salesman and worked his way up to be a ring announcer, then helped promote spot shows, and then later Power Pro in the late '90s. He was booking TV, but ran a company, sort of the successor. Coming out of the end days after USWA in the I'll say mid to late '90s. But during this time, while he was the scapegoat, I don't know. I really don't recall that. I'm just trying to think why was he? I know that it's accurate to say that my dad saw money in Dallas and thought that was the growth, and had let
the rough end drag. It happens.
Big bingo. Yeah. I mean, we're into WrestleMania 4 and 5 at this time, and Ted Turner's in the business. I mean, the territory days were done.
So your dad realizes, I just want to add, I'm glad you mentioned that because this is the context. Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage are about to set a WrestleMania pay-per-view record in 1989 at Trump Plaza. Big time market, big time prices, big time sales, big time success. And the story out there is that summer they're going to be releasing their first WWF movie. Hulk Hogan is now going to be a movie star.
Mm-hmm.
No holds barred. And on the other channel, they got Ric Flair and Terry Funk and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat tearing it up for Ted Turner. So it's Ted Turner, Vince McMahon, and Jerry freaking Jarrett hanging on for his life here in Memphis. And he realizes, man, the only way I can hang around here is I got to grow fast. Dallas is my best shot to do that. Is that fair to say?
It's very, because when my father started promoting full time and he was the territory promoter, he was the young guy. Vince Senior was older. Jim Crockett Senior was older. Vern was older. My dad was a kid. And so now here we are, fast forward to 1989. They were all done. Watts gone. Keigel gone. Fritz done. Everything out in California. Don Owen, for the most part, was done. Vern was sunsetting. Vince Jr. taking over for Vince Senior. Crockett's had sold out. Grahams were dead. I mean, my old man literally was hanging on by a thread, but saw Channel 11 in Dallas and the opportunity, and that was going to be his play. I don't say to grow, to survive. Truly to survive.
So let's talk about the Observer. Here's how they got out of this week's Loser Leaves Town match. The main event on April 21st at the Sportatorium, which drew 1,800 fans, was the Loser Leaves match with Erich Embry against Scandor Akbar. They brought in the cage from Memphis, which surrounds the ringside area and not just the ring, which allows for wrestlers to hide under the ring as well. Anyway, Frank Dusek was the ref and Percy Pringle had the key. We know Percy Pringle, for our younger listeners, as Paul Bearer. Cactus Jack Manson, aka Mick Foley, and Gary Young, under a mask, now wrestling under the name Super Zodiac, were hiding under the ring since about 5 p.m. And after Embry had pounded Akbar silly for 5 minutes, they showed up, complete with a baseball bat, and destroyed both Embry and Dusek. The faces couldn't climb the cage to make the save until finally Chris Adams showed up with a bolt cutter. Embry bled not only from the head, but also bit the rubber to bleed from the mouth. and was throwing up all over the ring. They announced he was hospitalized and all that. At the TV tapings the next morning, things got even more interesting. They announced Embry had been hospitalized all night and things were touch and go, and that all the faces spent the night at the hospital. Dusek then came out and suspended Akbar for life for the incident. But then Elliot Mays, billed as the head of the board of directors for the USWA, which in recent weeks they've been talking about as the governing body over both World Class and Memphis, came out. Mays in reality is Bob Van, I don't know how to say this fellow's last name, Gershie.
Yeah,
there you go. And he called Dusek to an emergency board meeting in the middle of the taping. So I guess it's Von Gershie. Anyway, chat me up. Do you remember this angle? I mean, how cool is this? It is pretty creative. Cactus Jack hiding under the ring. And then the magic of, hey, he's got to throw up blood. Well, let's just put quote unquote blood in a condom and let him bite it, vomit it out. A little theater here. That's old school wrestling, Daddy.
Oh, this is, I mean, yes, I remember it. Not just vividly, but the whole context. This is setting the hook because WCCW. So I want to make sure, and you help me piece this together. I'll do the best I can. But this was 101. It's my first hands-on education of rebranding or branding and the importance. And because to the naked eye, well, just take WCCW and run with it. You're going to get full rights to it. And the belief was the brand was completely damaged. And the brand was synonymous with the Von Erichs. And the brand had been in the Middle East. And, you know, that brand was associated so much so that we're going to do away with it. Okay. But the brand's still babyface. No matter how you slice and dice it, it's the baby. It is the, incumbent, if you will. So this was the angle to set the hook that the USWA is at the time, it was this unknown back channel, almost like Titan Sports was to the World Wrestling Federation. It's sort of it's just an unknown, almost like run of the mill. Oh, that's the governing body. They govern CWA and they govern WCCW and this and that and all this kind of stuff. So USWA during this episode and this episodic time, it was almost a non-entity, and that was by design. We don't want them to come in as the babyface. We're just going to come in. There's the governing body, but WCCW, and this is the beginning of classifying them as the heels. And this was the angle that really set the hook. It's good TV. Yes, it's old school wrestling, but it's simple storytelling that worked.
Here's how it finished. Mays then announced later in the show that a decision had been made, and the decision was to fire Dusek as matchmaker for World Class because he reinstated and booked Embry after Embry had lost a loser leaves town match without authorization from the USWA. The firing was effective at a certain time, which was just a few minutes before Dusek suspended Akbar. So therefore, Dusek had been fired before he suspended Akbar, so Akbar wasn't suspended. It's who's on first, but it is kind of fun.
Yeah, isn't it though?
Matt Watts the next week, as we get into May here, says Jerry Jarrett is said to have done such a phenomenal job of cleaning up the financial mess in World Class that the promotion is actually paying its bills on time and has even turned a profit in recent weeks. The payoffs for wrestlers are quite low, but Jarrett has accomplished much of the cost cutting by slashing the sportatorium staff and only opening the ticket office on the day of the card. So if nothing else, your dad knows how to run a business. And I know that it wasn't always popular with some of the boys, 316. But the reality is your dad made sure that the business was taken care of. So maybe some of the boys couldn't pay their bills, but the promotion had to be able to pay its, or there would be no more work for the boys. And sometimes some of the performers don't get that 316. Do you remember having conversations with your dad about the stress of World Class and finally, hey man, we're out of the hole. We're not making a bunch of money yet, but we got our head above water.
Well, the sportatorium decision, and my brother going out there to work for him, they had to revamp because that business had been in place for a long time. The personnel, the way the tickets were sold, the concession stands, he had to do upgrades just to make the building at sea level. I say that, they didn't like put in luxury suites or anything like that. Literally had to pass codes.
They were just doing what they'd always done for decades. And once upon a time that was working and we're making money hand over fist, but we're still operating our business as if we're making money hand over fist, and we're not. So we've got to, what I call, right size. And that was probably painful for some folks, but man, we're out of the red ink. We're now seeing some black. That's a big deal.
It was huge. I mean, it was all a part of what he wanted to do. And, you look back over his career, and right now he's got rental properties and just the simple, and he's late 70s and he's kicking ass, but it's simple. I got to make more than I spend. What a revolutionary concept. But it was growing pains. But again, go back to the top of the episode. Embry was eyes and ears. So my brother got out there, he cut the fat, and that's uncomfortable for a lot of folks, but he was rebranding and literally reorganizing, a big reorg, if you will. And that Channel 11 was a big component to, okay, keep the ratings good. I got to take care of cutting expenses down here at the Sportatorium. And he did quickly.
Talk to me a little bit about Renegades Rampage. It's in my notes here that you guys ran a Cinco de Mayo show, which is obviously a big deal in Mexico and certainly in Texas. So we're going to run it at the Sportatorium May 5th. There's a $13,000 house here, and Mil Mascaras is here. Is this your first time meeting Mil Mascaras or being in the building with Mil Mascaras? Do you remember this show?
So again, 22, right? So here in Tennessee. Now, obviously I've been around the world and love me some Mexican holidays and understand the culture and the country and the language a little bit. But in those days, this is the first time I'd ever heard of Cinco de Mayo. Like, what the hell is May 5th about? Anyway, all the holiday. And so I again, grew up in the business. I'd heard legendary stories about the most famous luchador in the world is Mil Mascaras. He's got TV shows and all this kind of stuff. And we're bringing him into Dallas. And I think this is the first time. But Conrad, to sidebar. So yes, it's the first time. And I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but Sportatorium had, 3 or 4 showers. So you had dressing rooms, different rooms, and where there would be groups of guys and then individuals. But anyway, like 3 showers you had a little curtain and then another curtain so in there showering, but it's like, what's that old show, Home Improvement, where neighbors look over the fence?
Wilson.
You could look at guys in the shower, but you could just see from the neck up. And I'll never forget when I'm in the shower and all that, and all of a sudden you hear flip-flops coming down the hall and shower shoes, and somebody gets in the stall next to me and I'm showering all this and soaping my eyes and water drains and eyes are sort of getting clear and look over and there he is. The luchador.
Wearing a mask. In the shower.
In the dressing room. Yes, sir. So Mills, yes. But that dude, what a reaction. And, he wasn't a spring chicken in these days, but God almighty. He drew and they loved him. And we were tag champs at one time. So do you know that? Me and Mills?
No, I did not know that.
I think it'll be in the notes. I think. Anyhow, but yeah, Cinco de Mayo. That's my first wrapping my head around. Okay, the Mexican holiday here in the good old USWA.
I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that Mil Mascaras even went to family reunions with the mask on.
I would definitely believe it,
which makes me really happy.
Me too. Just letting our listeners hear that story. We've given them two sort of like, what? Wait, a major newspaper talking about it wants a picture of a guy's prosthetic foot in the professional wrestling.
Yeah.
And there's a guy who showers
with a mask on. RASSLIN, that's wrestling. So here's an excerpt from a letter written in the Observer It's called the Readers Pages, of course. And old Jim from Milan, Tennessee says, since everyone is hollering about the CWA dying, I thought I'd tell you why it isn't going to happen. First, Lance Russell hasn't made much difference because the crowds at the arenas are about the same. The TV show will probably be close to the same ratings and may surprise people after the May books. The crowds have been low the past 2 years with Lance, and in this region, there's just too much TV wrestling. The TV studio matches are still booked 2 months in advance. The ratings remain high, and a 30-second ad on the show costs $550, the highest it's ever been, and they still have a waiting list for sponsorship. It's also the highest rate for any local show, considering or even including the news. Jarrett has eliminated the $2 parking fee at the Coliseum, and the usual Mid-South Coliseum fee of 10% of the gate or $2,000 for rent was brought down to 8% of the gate, period. Because wrestling used to bring in 55% of the Coliseum's income each year and still brings in 30 to 35%, the Coliseum doesn't want to lose the business because they have nothing else to bring in, especially on Monday nights. Jarrett, like Goulas before him, doesn't depend on Memphis alone for income. Jackson has had some good houses with Kerry Von Erich and some spot shows. They've brought in some bucks. It may not sound like much, but over a 30-day month, the income adds up. And when you have a pay structure for the wrestlers like Jarrett has, Jarrett will slowly but surely build Dallas into a profit-making company. His first 2 years of promoting here, 77 to 78, even with good crowds in Memphis, kept him on the edge of bankruptcy before he turned the operation around. So don't give up on Dallas or Memphis wrestling as long as Jerry Jarrett's in charge. He's an excellent businessman and will do what it takes to ensure success. How about that shit?
So before I get into that, Conrad, you know how you like to chastise me about
Occasionally,
you name it, all kind of stuff. Can I chastise you?
sure.
It's not Milan, Tennessee. It's freaking Milan.
Okay. Did you learn that in Colorado?
What do you think you are? Are you Italian?
Did you learn that in Colorado?
It's Milan, Tennessee. But no, it's a great West Tennessee town.
What's the population of Milan, Tennessee?
Milan's, I don't know, 15,000 back in those days. I don't know, but that is where Rick Rude.
No. The population today is 7,000.
No way.
And you're busting my balls about, hey man, there's a town out there with 7,000 people and you said it wrong. Ha ha.
It's tiny, but listen, that's where Jimmy Hart got sued. I want to say Neidhart and Rick Rude. Boy, we could Google that, but Jimmy Hart, great heel. Somebody tried to try him all for size and got his ass beat at ringside, and it was a mess. But that happened in Milan, Tennessee. But no, God almighty, that guy did the research about getting the $2 parking. That number, 55% on a Monday night show of all revenue. Now they had, at that time, they were called Memphis State, but the University of Memphis basketball season in there.
But you're running 52 shows. So of course you're going to be half.
That's 1 out of 7 days, and they're going to have half, and it's the worst day of the week.
I'm not arguing. I'm just saying it's impressive. I mean, when you think about it, yeah. Everybody in Memphis was dependent upon wrestling. I mean, that's just the reality. Of course, at the end of May, Kevin Von Erich's trying to return. Apparently he's been calling Jarrett, trying to get back, but Jarrett hasn't agreed to bring him back for fear that Kevin would simply no-show too many towns he's booked in or show up, well, not so working condition. And he figured it was an easier way to do it this way. However, it looks as though his easing up on this viewpoint since Erich Embry on an interview Saturday asked for Kevin to come back. So did your dad just think, hey man, it's worth another shot. It's best for business, quote unquote. That became a popular thing a few years ago on WWE TV. Do you remember him having a change of heart about Kevin and warming up to the idea? And was any of that discussed to you?
Well, I remember the Kevin discussions, but we joked about it that, the conversation between Lawler and my father, Austin Idol will never work in Memphis again. Hey, Austin, we've got this angle. It's going to be, it's what's best for business. Vince McMahon subscribes to that. that generation, and, I think there's some validity to it. Okay. Is this going to be best for business? And as well as Kevin was still a partner. He owned 20% of the syndication. He owned 20% of the business. So, my dad is obviously a guy of second and third and fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh and eighth chances. But I know that it was a mixed bag, and some guys were leaning toward, I think Erich wanted Kevin to come back. Look, the Von Erich name still carried a lot of weight, but ease into it. Some folks were like, nope, we've got things up and running. We don't need him. But no, I know there was a decision. And of course, his brother Kerry always asked for him. Come on, we need to book, that was his biggest supporter.
So let's talk about, a little bit of controversy. Erich, Embry, and World Class have been holding out on paying Pro Wrestling Digest Dennis Brent $544 for the World Class Championship Wrestling Arena programs because Erich is not happy about some of the things that were written in the newsletters and some of his treatment in PWD and was Pro Wrestling Digest and the programs. Do you remember there being, did you ever hear of this? I know you were friendly with Erich Embry, but the idea that, hey, if you're going to write that sort of shit, I'm not going to pay.
I don't, but I'm not debating it at all, but I don't remember it.
It's just tremendous.
I'd like to ask my father if he ever remembered it, cause you said withholding, you said Erich withheld the check.
Yeah.
As if Erich's responsible for paying, which I'm assuming that's my father's responsibility.
Well, maybe he didn't turn the invoice in, or
that's what I'm saying. It's interesting to see how Erich got hung on this.
So the April 29th card in Memphis drew an $11,000 house. It's Lawler and Austin Idol teaming up in the main event against the Master of Pain and P.Y. Chu-Hee. Am I saying that right?
So Master of Pain, yeah, P.Y. Chu-Hee.
Yeah.
That's the Tennessee version.
Okay. The match ended when Lawler rammed Tojo Yamamoto's groin into the ring post, and it was announced on television that he was injured so bad he had to retire from wrestling. Of course, this again is going to look stupid because on World Class TV, they've been talking about Tojo Yamamoto as the president of the USWA, and he'll be showing up just fine on World Class TV the next week.
More mixed messaging.
Yeah, this is a mess. Did your dad just not have the proper support to make sure this sort of thing didn't happen?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, best I can recall, they knew exactly. It goes into the edit capabilities, and they knew it was happening. And a lot of now look, we're talking 89 here. So a lot of the wrestling fans had no idea what Dave Meltzer did. There was no, there was no, you had to have the physical newsletter in your hand to know about this. And maybe there were 1-900 numbers, but it just wasn't as widely.
I'm just saying it's shown on TV. So
that goes back to the edit deal, being able to edit it out.
But you could also just not do that creatively.
Bingo. Now there's I don't have the answer to that.
So
the reason I'd like to hear their rebuttal, maybe.
Yeah. So the main event in Dallas on June 9th. So 10 days after the whole Tojo stuff, Erich Embry is going to take on the legendary Tojo Yamamoto. Yamamoto was billed here as being the leading stockholder in World Class Wrestling. He's portrayed as being loyal to Scandor Akbar and the heels, of course. So they have a match where if Erich loses, you guessed it, he has to leave town. If Yamamoto loses, then he has to forfeit his majority stockholdership in World Class. Of course, Embry wins. So now on TV, I guess he's the head of the World Class promotion. What do you think of this creative? Erich Embry is now the leading stockholder in World Class.
Well, it's all part of the weekly episodic transition from World Championship Wrestling to rebranded as USWA. God, I completely forgot about this until notes. And then I looked over because these notes are a work in progress and have been. I remember now Tojo, because I think Tojo legitimately wanted to retire from Tennessee. Not just Tennessee, all of wrestling. And they used him for these last couple of angles. If memory serves me correctly, Wow, I forgot about him being involved into this whole rebranding. Interesting.
Well, here we go. Kevin Von Erich is returning. This past week, Kerry was getting triple teamed by Harris, Parsons, and Brickhouse Brown, and Kevin made the save. Kerry explained that Kevin had gone all these months, or he was gone all these months because he's touring the world as a special goodwill ambassador for world-class wrestling, but now he's back to stay. Hypothetically, where all do you think Kevin toured when he was on his world tour as a goodwill ambassador?
Denton.
Maybe Fort Worth.
Well, Colleyville or what's that other town? Anyhow, Denton and Mesquite and back to Denton. Not far out of the Metroplex area.
Channel 11, which runs the Saturday night show and is the prime outlet for the Dallas area, gave the promotion an ultimatum to clean up the show or they're going to pull the plug. KTVT is tired of all the references by Embry and Pringle, who keep telling this person or that person to kiss my ass on TV. And one time, Pringle even led the Sportatorium audience in a chant of kiss my ass when they're trying to build up heat for Embry's attempt to get Tojo out of power. Do you remember hearing about this, that there was some pushback from the station about language here in 1989?
Oh, yeah. And that's where, like as the, I don't even want to call it shock TV, but the Attitude Era came on and Stone Cold and, that's when that was said, every Monday on cable. Well, this is late 80s. And it was that balancing act because things were building and the arena loved it. But then all of a sudden I would hear, obviously I was never a part of a Channel 11 call, but you hear like, the TV show switchboard lit up. And that's what the old saying was. That's like on Saturday mornings in Memphis, when the switchboard lit up, it would say, ooh, you don't want bad calls to your TV station. Like it's one thing to say, I hope Jerry Lawler kicks their ass this Monday. It's another like, I'll never watch this show again. You get enough of those calls, the general manager at Channel 5. Yeah, you are. It's bad business.
I get it. Erich Embry is now known as the chairman of the board of World Class, and that happened because he beat Tojo back on June 9th. And now his first action, he's going to fine Akbar, Iceman, and Brown $10,000 a piece for attacking Kerry Von Erich. And then he's going to announce that the return to the Sportatorium on the 23rd is going to have all tickets at just $4. And then he turns over the power as chairman of the board to Max Andrews, who in reality is in charge of world-class TV syndication, but he's portrayed here as a babyface member of the world-class board. Max Andrews, not a name we hear a lot about. What can you tell us about old Max?
This is end of May, right? Is that
this is June of 89.
June. Okay. I was wondering like ticket prices dead at 4 June. Anyway, Max was the TV guy. I mean, my father's a wrestling promoter and a content executive producer and knew how to create the content. Max was a television syndicator, and that was legitimately his syndicator partner. It's a name that isn't really bandied around, but man, the ESPN deal and the US syndication, Max was a player, had nice offices out in Las Colinas. I remember that. And that's where Bob worked. And, it's, I think that's Keith Mitchell reminded me. He said, no, Jeff, that's the first place we ever met was in Las Colinas. And I'm like, what? He said, yeah, man, you were just a baby. You were a kid. But yeah, Max Andrews, that was his syndication.
So the week of June 26, 1989, there's a ton of rumors flying around about the future of Jarrett Promotions, both in regards to Dallas and Tennessee. Meltzer would say the only thing pretty well confirmed is that the Dallas group will shortly be changing its name from World Class Championship Wrestling to the United States Wrestling Association. And there's talk that the name change takes place or when it happens, that the Tennessee-based CWA will become part of the USWA as well. They've already been calling the world title that Jerry Lawler holds the USWA world title in both circuits. And when this group changes its name to the USWA, it will begin trying to syndicate 3 shows: USWA Worldwide Wrestling, USWA Wrestling Challenge, and the Best of USWA Wrestling, which you must admit are imaginative names for wrestling programs. Action Media Group will handle the syndication, which is an interesting twist since Action Media Group also sells the national ads for the NWA syndicated package. And needless to say, the NWA isn't too happy over this. So now it's going to be formalized here. We're going to all fall under one name. We've got a new direction. We're going to have these 3 shows that we're going to syndicate. And the folks who are going to help us syndicate it are also doing the NWA syndications. What do you think of that decision in hindsight? Right, Call?
Well, they could write checks. They had put together a great sales team. This is best of my recollection. They knew how to, and so, gosh, I want to make sure people are listening to this follow it. It was a wrestling show that would be syndicated and bought market by market. So you'd go into,
I don't mean to cut you off, but the gist of what I'm asking is the name change. In hindsight, world-class wrestling was known worldwide for a long time.
Yeah. Okay.
All the way to Israel and back. And Dallas is a much bigger market than Memphis. And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think the folks in Memphis necessarily cared what we called the wrestling, as long as it's at the same night, at the same place with the same folks. If Jerry Lawler's here at the Coliseum, I'll be there.
Yep.
In hindsight, would it have been wiser to just switch the name for everything to world class?
Good question. I don't believe so. And here's why. Now, USWA, I want to make sure that this is, USWA was not a name known in Memphis either. It was
that's what I'm saying is globally, if we're really trying to syndicate something, would we have done better? Like tomorrow, if Vince McMahon said, guys, you know what, this WWE shit, it doesn't really work for me. We're going to call it AWF.
Yeah.
Why would you just give up all of that built-in brand equity you have in world class, unless it was an ego thing or a control thing or...
So a couple of great questions that we need to get with conversations with Conrad, Jerry Jarrett, part 3, or no. And maybe you covered that. I don't know.
No, we didn't.
Who owned world class championship wrestling?
My understanding is your dad was the majority owner
of that name
with the 2 brothers. I mean, I felt like when you buy the company, you buy the name. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. Yeah. I know that and I heard this, because these questions we talked about, the brand was very damaged. It was synonymous.
But was it damaged in Texas or globally? Because I'm just thinking, if we really are going to make a big play and syndicate.
And I think his global play, they got into the Middle East through the Simpson family. And it was, it wasn't like it was a global business today. So I know he wanted to brand with a United States or the continent, the 50 states. He wanted to do something that here's America's wrestling. That was kind of his mindset, right or wrong. So do I think it was the right move? I do think it was the right move to get away from WCCW, because I think that was so synonymous with no shows. I think the brand was damaged, and I think it being damaged in, we'll call it the Dallas area. Also, if you're going to make your money out of Dallas, you can't have it world-class everywhere but Dallas. If you're going to rebrand in Dallas, you got to rebrand across the country.
But I guess my question is, if you're thinking, hey, the brand is damaged, why the hell buy it in the first place? Why not just let these boys drown themselves and then swoop in and pick up the TV, not assume their debt? And
so that goes back to question 1. When Fritz said, Jerry, I don't know why you're doing this.
Yeah.
You count on them. And my father's thought was, if it goes away, it's gone. And maybe Vince gets it, or at that time, Crockett gets it. Let's hang on to it while we can.
I see. His motivator was fear of loss to Crockett, Turner, or McMahon, what have you.
Or it go away, them get out of the business. Yeah. He had a couple of television stations in Nashville. Now, Memphis was WMC TV and WAVTE, which is the NBC affiliate in Louisville. We got great ratings and consistent. In the Nashville market, although we had some kick ass ratings through the years. There would be times when the television station would be sold or flipped, or even a new general manager would come in and say, "Hey, we're going to change you time slots. You're going to go on at 8 o'clock Saturday morning." My dad would go, "He's going to put us out of business." Wrestling fans, you have to be in that sweet spot between really 10 and 12, so the quick decisions. He had been burned in Jackson, Tennessee, in Chattanooga. Evansville was always that way. Evansville was down because we never had that relationship with the TVs like we did in Memphis and Louisville. And so I think he was gun shy. As a matter of fact, I know he was gun shy of, they have the relationship. They still want us. Let's keep it.
I just think it's interesting to think about, what could have been if it was approached a different way. And maybe we do need to do another conversation with your dad about that, because it seems to me, if your dad had the intel that, hey, they got all these unpaid bills stacking up at Channel 11, he could have called and said, "Hey guys, I'd like to take their spot." "Oh, well, we can't. We're contracted. We're in business with them." Well, hypothetically, the rumor and innuendo is that they've defaulted on that contract because they're behind, they're past due. Hypothetically, if I could just pay you a quarter in advance or a year in advance, I bet he could have got that spot.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's good to chatter. Yeah.
So let's talk about what happens at this $4 ticket show that we were talking about as we're back at the Sportatorium. 3,000 fans are here on June 23rd. What a card this was, too. Jimmy Jack Funk is going to beat Buster Fowler. Chris Adams is going to beat Cactus Jack Manson. Al Perez is going to beat Gary Young. Erich Embry is going to go to a double DQ. Robert Fuller and Brian Lee, that's right, that Brian Lee, win the world-class tag team titles from old Mil Mascaras and Jeff Jarrett. Kerry and Kevin Von Erich are going to team with Sean Simpson to beat the Blackbirds. And Harold Harris in a penalty box match, and a wrestling bear beat Scandor Akbar. And after the match, Gary Young did a run in, and the bear chased Young around as well. In this same show, we had a guy taking showers with a mask. We had the Dallas paper wanting to know if they can get a picture of an amputated foot. And now there's a wrestling bear.
You gotta love it. Think about that.
It's the silliest thing I've ever heard.
Oh, you've heard. Have you ever seen a wrestling bear?
I mean, I've seen video of Tracy Smothers wrestling a bear, but I've never actually been in a building with a bear that wrestled. No.
Okay.
Have you wrestled a bear?
I've never wrestled a bear.
I'm going to tell Effie, and maybe this Sunday, he could ease in there.
Okay. Get him a bear suit.
I think he might define bear differently, but that's a story for another time.
That's a whole nother story. Easy, pal.
That's going to get us halfway through 1989. We're going to cut it off there. We'll pick up where we left off and finish 1989 and on into 90. And it doesn't end well, but it seems, at least at this point, hey man, Kevin Von Erich's coming back. We got some sold out houses. We're moving in the right direction. As we march towards July of 89, you as a young buck, just getting your feet underneath you in the wrestling business, did you feel like this was going well? Were we on the right track? Were we making progress?
You'll like the first thing that came to my mind. The first thing came to my mind?
What?
Conrad. I selling the shit out of some picture money during.
I love you for that.
No, I knew the syndication. I was really getting an education, because in Tennessee, it was the TV show on Saturday mornings and spot shows. And I sort of understood that business model of, marketing and buying radio and buying newspaper ads. I understood that business model. I understood the TV business model, the regular Memphis and Brent and Louisville, just the whole business model out there. Now I'm getting education on TV syndication and how you can, remember those glasses that you'd sell to the fishermen that block the shade, all the different commercials that were put into the syndicated wrestling show. And you saw the big numbers and how you sell these spots and sell glasses. Excuse me. It was big business, Conrad. So yes, the short answer to your question is I absolutely was like, it was just not my opinion. The checks, you know what? That's the first, about this time. So June, July, I need to look this up, but it's about the first time, Conrad, that I got a check a consistent check. My bad, because I'd made that off spot shows, but I started to get a consistent check, but they weren't payoffs. They were literally out of a business that was making money because I was a part of the office and doing things. I was low man on the totem pole, but I was getting checks, but not for taking bumps. Pretty good.
It's listen, I gotta ask. I know you're in a relationship at the time. Your girlfriend was going to college, so I know you wouldn't participate in this sort of behavior. But hypothetically, was the party scene better in the Memphis territory, based on your experience, or Dallas? As a young wrestler who just wanted to take advantage of all that the world had to offer.
So, hypothetically speaking, rumor in India, no, the Dallas, it was by this time, let me think. So I'd been out there about a year. Memphis, that the consistency of those, and are you wanting to say nightclubs? What do you try? I want to make sure.
Girls. I tried to tee it up in a tasteful way when I said, I know you're in a relationship.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I could tell you there's no difference.
Okay.
No difference.
Just in my head, Dallas is a bigger market. So in my head.
Oh, well, I will say this. The advertisements for gentlemen's clubs in the Metroplex on billboards and taxi cabs, and that you didn't see that in Memphis and Louisville and Evansville and Nashville. I do remember, like, dadgum, there is a advertisement for a strip club on every corner in Dallas. Just stating facts, Connie.
Well, I ain't mad at it. And I'm not mad that next week we're going to be back talking all things Royal Rumble 1995. Of course, it's January. We can't let January go by without talking about the Royal Rumble. But boy, what a big show this was for you. You're curtain jerking, but boy, it goes your way. You're going to go on to defeat Razor Ramon for the Intercontinental Championship. I think this is your first Intercontinental title too, is it not?
It is, and it was huge. And I can remember sitting under the learning tree of Pat Patterson. This is one of those times where I go, wow, he's good. He's really got a vision. But Pam Anderson was a part of Royal Rumble in Tampa. And, you know, me and Road Dogg had just gotten together. So there's going to be some good Road Dogg stories in this episode. The build up to the Rumble, the matches with Scott, pre and post this. I don't know what we'll get into there. What a great time in my career. I was
at that point, it's the pinnacle, right?
Oh, by leaps and bounds. It was, you know, it wasn't like, I made it, but it was, okay, that is definitely I didn't think it at the time, a bucket list item, but it was a first major milestone.
And we're going to be talking about it next week, just in time for Rumble season. Don't forget to make plans to join us at this year's Royal Rumble weekend. It's going to be an extravaganza, folks. It's Saturday, the 29th, right there in St. Louis. Pick up your tickets right now at jeffanderichlive.com. Don't forget, we've got a VIP opportunity where you get to come in, claim the best seats in the house, and you're going to get a piece of swag you can't buy anywhere else. Plus, really cool 8x10s autographed by both Erich and Jeff. You'll get your picture with both guys. They'll even sign something for you. And then the show starts. And yes, I'm going to be there running the MC. I think we might have a special guest or two. Actually, I know we do, but I don't want to tease it too big. But it is going to be something people are going to be tweeting about and talking about. But more importantly, you can't see it anywhere else. I know it seems like we record everything here on adfreeshows.com, but we want to give you a live, intimate experience. And I know for sure there's one story that Jeff Jarrett tells very rarely that I'm going to force him to spill the beans on that is going to change your life as a wrestling fan forever. And then you get to ask Jeff any question you want. We are going to talk about Dixie. We are going to talk about AEW. We are going to talk about Jeff's new promotion. He's definitely not starting this year, and so much more. Pick up your tickets right now. I'm telling you, you want to be there. We're going to have a blast, and we want you to be a part of it. And we'll be done in plenty of time for you to make your way over to the Royal Rumble. And Jeff, I think you and I are going to be in an Airbnb that weekend with Dave Silva and Eric Bischoff. It's going to be like a frat house over there. I'm looking forward to it.
Is Cassio coming?
That's the rumor.
And innuendo. Me and him had a nice little text exchange the other night. Did he share anything with you?
Nope. He's been kind of hunkered down because old Big Booty Judy had a COVID scare. She did not have it. She had the old regular ass Alabama flu. But there for a little bit, they hunkered down like, so they were all nervous, but they made it. And we hope you guys will too, to St. Louis on Saturday, January 29th. It's jeffanderichlive.com. And don't forget, in order to watch Jeff Jarrett's, I guess we're going to call it Return to the Ring. I know this. It's the biggest independent wrestling show of the year by far. Hammerstein Ballroom, the home of ECW's One Night Stand. So many great Ring of Honor shows. And now the little engine that could. Game Changer Wrestling is changing the indie game for good. It happens this Sunday. And of course, as with everything else, the Forrest Gump of wrestling will be there. Jeff Jarrett finds himself in the middle of a hot issue. And he's got, as Bruce would say, a fresh paint of coat on. Check it out. It's pickafight.com. Jeff, I'm going to be watching it. I'm going to have Cassio over, Silva over. We're going to have our popcorn ready, but I'll tell you this. If you don't get your hand raised, if you thought I had it rough here today talking about Alabama, you wait till next week here on this program.
Pally, I think I'm going to do something that's extremely unnecessary, as Effie says. That was unnecessary. I want to just bitch slap him.
Well, you get your chance this Sunday. Pickafight.com, jeffanderichlive.com. And of course, you get all these shows early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com. Speaking of that, before we go, Jeff, you recently had a chance to get together, as we just covered your whole experiment in the WWF with the NWA.
Oh, gosh.
We had a couple of old school NWA promoters, Mr. Bill Behrens, who was one of your early confidants in the formative days of NWA TNA wrestling, which we talked about in the archives, and your man, Howard Brody. Maybe they had a little beef once upon a time. I hear that was quite the interesting experience over at adfreeshows.com.
I loved it. He came right out and he says, when we're showing the video, yeah, that's Kurgan's jacket. Now Kurgan's 6'5", 270, and Howard is not that, but you get little golden nuggets when we do these little watch alongs and ad free. What a year we're going to have 2022 with ad frees. Got lots of good stuff coming up. Oh yeah, I owe you a call on something, and the wheels are in motion. We've got to set up a call this week, pal.
I think you and I have about 5 calls we have to do.
We do. I know. Yeah.
Stay tuned. It's going to be a big year. We've got big stuff planned. I don't want to spill all the beans here, but we're going to have an announcement next week, one the week after that, one the week after that. You know, they say this is busy time for WWE. It's Mania season. Well, it's Mania over here at adfreeshows.com. Come join us, and be sure to join us in St. Louis Saturday, the 29th, jeffanderichlive.com. We'll be back next week talking all things Royal Rumble 1995 on My World